Welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us. You're watching Smart 24 TV, and we drive your business. I'm still with Mr. Alex Muhwezi, an investment expert, a banker, a business management student, you can name it. And we are talking microfinance institutions in Uganda being the drivers of sustainable economic development and driving us out of the poverty, of course, that is biting so many people in Uganda today. And of course, we've broken down the different segments of institutions, financial institutions, right up from the commercial banks to the credit institutions, then to the MDIs, and down to the microfinance institutions that are so important, like Mr. Muhwezi mentioned, when it comes to growing people from out of poverty and sustaining our economy. Now, Mr. Muhwezi,
yes, sir.
You definitely talked about the importance and relevance of these institutions, and I agree with you. They do contribute a lot, especially when it comes to young people coming out of unemployment and so many other problems that they do address. But recently, there have been rampant cases of fraud, and very many people have reported that money has gone into a myoga and they have not seen this money do what it's supposed to do, and so many other problems that are currently still being faced when it comes to microfinancial institutions. Where do you think is the problem?
Thank you so much, Anthony, for that question. One, like any other program or project, there will always be some challenges. The sector we are talking about is a very wide sector with different stakeholders, with different players. This microfinance sector we're talking about, you have donors in place, then you have government, then you have private individuals who have come in. It's true there were challenges and there are still some challenges. And some of the challenges were a result of no regulatory framework. So what government has done, what our members of parliament have done, there was an enactment of the Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Act to regulate this sector. So that institution and that act created an institution called Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority, UMRA. So UMRA is in place to regulate this sector. So there was a challenge with the regulation, regulating this sector to ensure that, one, there are standards, there are procedures, and quack organizations are kicked out. So that has been put in place. But of course, we still have challenges with the some players that have stolen poor people's savings. You have, we've already seen these issues coming up, especially in the media. You people keep bringing them out of where people have disappeared with the poor people's savings. That notwithstanding, there is progress being made to address some of these challenges. For example, today, you cannot do serious money lending when you're not registered. So you must have a certificate of registration with UMRA, and this is an annual registration. Meaning, if, for example, you have not performed it to standard, you will have challenges with renewal of your certificate. So all these are attempts to ensure that this sector is regulated. This sector works to achieve the goals and aspirations of this country. So I wouldn't want to say that the sector has failed, but I wouldn't also want to say that there are no challenges. There are challenges like in any other sector, but there are attempts to address these challenges. Definitely, one of the other issues that keeps coming up is the issue of the human resource. This is a sector that has evolved, but we had the human resource gaps. And what do I mean by human resource gaps? Having qualified and experienced microfinance experts, I want to guide the nation on how to deal with the microfinance, but also to run the operations of the different organizations. I will give you an example of a circle. People in the farmers in a certain village, for example, in Bushenyi, meet and agree, let's start Bushenyi Matoke Farmers Circle. They start saving and lending money amongst themselves. Then they pick a young man or woman who is well known to them, and they deploy him as a manager to start running their circle. With due respect, this young man or woman has not had training in how to run credit, in how to manage public money. So what will happen eventually is that you have exposed this young man or woman to substantial money, but you have not enhanced their capacity in terms of training and development. You are tempting this young man or woman. So those are some of the gaps that we have witnessed for some time. You hear people running away with money. And of course, the other issue is that some of these circles start up, call themselves circles, but they are not registered. So if you are not registered as a circle, if you get challenges of this nature, it is very difficult even for law enforcers to support you because you are not registered. In the first place, you are doing an illegality because the law requires that as a circle, you need to register before you start your operations. But you're operating and you're not registered. So it also becomes difficult to be helped when you get challenges. And then, of course, the other issue, Anthony, is that some of these circles and microfinance institutions emanate from political interests. Sometimes they are started as political tools, and the supervising committees and the board of some of these circles, they are politicians who will come and promise the wananchi, start a circle, we are going to look for you money, and this money is not for paying back. So once that money comes, people are told, borrow, they pick this money, and paying back is a problem. Because they were told this is money for rewarding you for having voted very well. Forgetting that actually this is money which you have accessed, for example, from government, and has to be paid back. So these are some of the challenges. Politicizing the microfinance sector. I'm not a prophet of doom, but if, for example, this issue is not properly addressed, it will affect the PDM. If you see how the parish, the parish circle is being formed, there's a lot of politicization around it. And the moment you make politics override the economic aspects of why people are coming together, then you have a problem. So these are some of the challenges that have been highlighted. You know the issues around youth fund. You create a fund. The fund is to support a target group of people. You call people to come and apply for this fund. One, you have not trained these people in what they are going to use this money for. The worst thing you can do to me is give me money when I don't have a plan on what I'm going to use this money for. Or even if I have a plan of what I'm going to do, but I don't have the requisite knowledge on what I'm going to do. So those are some of the challenges. You get the money, and then you don't know what exactly what to do. Definitely you eat it. So those are some of the issues that have been coming up. The issues of course, the issues of corruption. The issues of corruption are very serious. Fraudulent practices within these different organizations. So for me, as we discuss this topic, my appeal to those who are listening to us and are involved in this sector, if you belong to a circle, ensure that this circle is registered with the different institutions of government that register circles. Number two, have clear bylaws, have clear memorandums of understanding, objectives, to bind all of you together and enable you to operate efficiently and effectively. Number three, employ someone that has been properly vetted and you are sure of their qualifications and experience and you are comfortable enough that they will actually push your agenda forward. The other point is choose a board. Select a board that may not necessarily be your friends, but a board that will provide adequate oversight on your operations. I'm sure once you have these parameters in place, you should be able to succeed. And then lastly, invest in training, especially on aspects of credit management. Credit management is not a simple process. You have a loans officer go market the loan, he brings the application, it is assessed, processed, and then disbursed, and then loan administration after. But if you don't continuously invest in that training for you to know how to manage your credit process, definitely you keep having those kinds of challenges.
Yes, thank you very much for those wonderful insights, Mr. Muhwezi. And about the human resource challenge, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we are still having. When it comes to administering a money lending business or a circle, what positions are we looking at here, and which qualifications should people really have to become maybe the chairman of a certain savings group? Because we've seen people, for example, I know a certain choir somewhere, they formed a circle, but none of them knows about finance. Yes, they are good artists and so on, but they want the chairman because of the issue of trust. They feel like they cannot trust anyone outside them to lead them, and so they want someone inside, and yet they don't have the competence. So what qualifications should people be looking out for when especially they're putting people in charge of their circles, especially the chairman and the people who are in charge of the loans, like you call them loan officers?
Yes.
Is it a must that those people must be members, or we can actually choose a separate entity, someone outside the circle, to actually take over?
Yeah, thank you so much. If you are thinking of sustainability, you are thinking of long-term growth, you need to establish a system in place. One, today we are fortunate enough that there are IT systems that can help you run the operations. Regarding the question you have asked, for a circle to operate efficiently and effectively, it needs a board. Now, this board, like I earlier said, these men and women do not necessarily need to be your friends. But these could be people who are experts in their areas of training. You have started a circle. I'm sure amidst yourselves, you may find a teacher, you may find someone who is a business person, a businessman who studied the business administration. You may have a media person amongst your celebs. Now, you can pick from those skills and have those people on the board, because each of them brings a different aspect into how management of the circle is looked at. So those are some of the qualifications that I feel that one needs to look at someone's experience, look at their commitment towards your success. Because the most important thing is that you have started this circle because you want to succeed. So look at someone who is committed to your success. Number two, look at someone who has time to give you. Because you always need to consult this person. So find someone who has time for you. Someone who has, I talked about, experience in certain areas of economics or of social life. That person will be able to would be an asset to your circle. Then, depending on the size of your circle, if you have just started 1 or 2, 3 years, you can manage your operations internally. In some circles, usually you have a chairman, then you have a vice, you have a secretary, you have a treasurer and a few committee members. So in this case, if you are still small and you have just started, you can have, for example, your treasurer manage the finance aspects supported by the entire executive. But this work becomes easier if you embrace an IT system that can, for example, help members to make their savings wherever they are. Number two, members are able to access their statements wherever they are. 3, members can be able to, for example, request for a loan or credit wherever they are. So once that system is in place, especially when you are starting, it makes life easy. And then, of course, as you grow, it necessitates you to, for example, hire a manager, have an office to run your operations. So that in case someone wants to access office, make inquiries, they're able to reach out to you, and then the circle is run smoothly.
In other words, you need support at least from different sectors.
Yes.
You don't need to just look at one area.
Yeah.
Now, there's also the issue of streamlining the operations. For example, someone wants to really borrow money from the circle, but they are not so sure on what they want to start. Even when it comes to the government programs, what should people know before, for example, going into borrowing money from a circle? I've seen some people borrow to buy cars. And you have no idea how much it really costs to run a car. Maybe you want to start, an Uber business, or you want to drive the car, but are you able to sustain that? So what information should people have at the back of their minds, especially when they're accessing credit? Should you borrow really to start a business, or you should actually borrow to increase the business you already have in terms of capital, in terms of size? What should really be the motive of someone getting to borrow money, for example, from a circle?
Yeah, thank you so much, Anthony, for that question. In credit, they are what we normally call the 5 C's of credit. Of course, one of them is capacity. The second one is collateral. Then the third one is cash flow. Yes, so one, before you consider borrowing, the first question is, what is the purpose for borrowing? Why do you need to borrow? Number 2, my personal advice is that do not borrow to start a new business. Why? You are not so sure of what will happen when that business starts. You are starting this business based on different projections. For example, Uganda's economy will grow. There will be a number of visitors coming to Uganda. There will be demand for transport. The weather will be okay. The politics will be okay. The health situation in the country will be okay. Now, you borrow to start a new business. Now, imagine someone who had borrowed money in 2020 and from nowhere, COVID emerges and the country is locked up. You have borrowed, this is a green field that you're going to invest in, but you have borrowed. So my advice is, one, purpose. Why are you borrowing? Number two, do not borrow to start a new business. Borrow to increase working capital in the business. Borrow to diversify the line of business. Borrow to enhance your capacity to serve your customers. But do not borrow to start a new business. Three, don't go to borrow for consumption. Don't go to borrow to buy a car for consumption. Because if this car is not going to turn into a revenue generating asset, then it will become a problem to you. What this means is that if you borrow for consumption, you indirectly be positioning yourself to kill your business. Because what this means is that because this car is not generating cash flow, I am picking cash flow from my running business to service the loan. What this means is that each month that passes by, the cash flow in my business will keep reducing and affecting my operations. So in a period of, for example, 4 years in which I'm supposed to pay back the loan, you'll find that actually my business has collapsed. So don't borrow for consumption. If that consumption cannot, if it's not a healthy emergency, that consumption can wait. Or that consumption can be financed by you liquidating one of your assets, but not borrow to consume. And that's where a number of people have challenges. Now, the other point I want to make, Anthony, which is very fundamental, don't borrow to pay back other loans.
No, that's where most of us are right now. We're going to take a quick break. Mr. Muhwezi there, starting from don't borrow to actually fix another loan. We are still talking microfinance institutions and how these can be actually improved in order for us to come out of the poverty that currently is ravaging the country. I'm still talking with Mr. Alex Muhwezi. And of course, we're still coming back on the topic of where we should borrow and when and how, but also the money lending business. Recently, there was a High Court ruling on money lenders, and currently it is not allowed for a non-licensed money lender to charge interest. If you want to know more about that, stay with us. We return after this short break.